Okay, I'm going to tell you about a bunch of cases I've done and give you an idea what I do. But it wasn't until I'd been a lawyer 17 years in 1991 that I had a bit of an epiphany. I had my first big estate litigation file that lasted 2 weeks, and it was a predator, a psychiatric nurse who spotted an old guy who'd lost his wife after 65 years of marriage. She moved in as the housekeeper. Within a month, she was in his will as inheriting everything. She was on title to his house, and then he died. Then his son came to me, and we sued to set aside all those transactions, and we won. And the province had a full-page, front-page photo of the housekeeper with her bags packed on the porch, and I knew I'd arrived. I just decided that's all I'm going to do from here on in, and that's all I have done for the last 24 or 5 years, is estate litigation and those types of stories. And they're just marvelous stories. Oh, by the way, I then sued the notary for the $80,000 in legal fees, which my client had to pay me. And I got fees on fees because I succeeded in that as well. And got to know the notary profession, or at least they got to know me. I then taught the notaries for about the next 15 years of state law. But that was my first time in the newspaper, and that got me my next case, and that got me my next case. And I've had a number of very interesting cases. I'd like you all to advise your friends to do their own will, for example. I had a little old lady. A little old lady came to me, and she had a perfectly hand-printed will, Maclean's printed, I hereby bequeath and devise and bequest, and all those big legal words. And then she gave everything to the trustee, and then she put in a burn in hell clause. If my brother should ever contest this estate, I want it brought to the attention of the court that he's been an abusive alcoholic all his life. I don't want him to get anything in my estate. And then she signed her will in the presence of 2 witnesses, all in the presence of each other. It's a valid will. She just forgot to give away her estate. So when her brother came to see me, he was, of course, upset at these vile words she said about him, but he felt much better when I told him that he will actually inherit everything because he's her next of kin. And so the great irony is she saved $200, $300 doing her own will, but the one person on earth that she didn't want to inherit got it all. You see, love that. Now, when I moved over to Kerrisdale about 15 years ago, and my first case there was a death. A prominent physician suddenly dropped dead and left her $1 million estate to her 2 dogs and 4 cats for life. And then after they die, it would go to her medical partners. Well, the problem is cats have a life expectancy of 20 years. So they asked me for my advice, and I recommended antifreeze. It leaves no paw prints, there's no questions asked, and they didn't like that, so I suggested a pet coyote. They didn't like that, so for the last 20 years, these cats have been living in a house. Don't do that type of will. Give them some dog chow and move on. I'd like to talk about the Hooker case. It was a good one. An old guy lost his wife for 50 years or whatever, so he answered an ad out in Maple Ridge to a hooker who was specializing in servicing seniors. And after some servicing, she moved in, changed the locks, cut him off from his 3 children, and married him. Then she did a will, he did a will, leaving everything to her. And if not her, then her daughter, who he never met, nothing to his own 3 children. Then they went on their honeymoon to Hawaii, and he ended up in the hospital with a ruptured scrotum. Wild honeymoon. Came back, and she got a little carried away one night, and she literally beat him to death. She physically beat him to death, and she was convicted of murder. And so there's a policy of law that you can't benefit from your own crime, so she can't inherit, but that means her own daughter inherits his entire estate, who the deceased never met. The 3 children, of course, who were just beside themselves, hired me, I sued, the 3 children got everything. Okay, it's the sort of work I do. So then there's the threesome. I want to talk about threesomes. Many of you here like threesomes. And I had a case where there was a threesome for 50 years. Husband and wife got married. George moved in with them. They had 2 kids that didn't look alike, that never got along, and my client at age 54 finds out that he gets disinherited. And the reason he got disinherited was I'm not your dad. Well, if he wasn't my dad, then who is my dad? George? Well, so anyways, I had a quandary of like 2 spouses. This is like 10 years ago. Can you have 2 spouses? Well, yeah, you can, okay. So, but for those of you involved in threesomes, you could have a complicated estate if you die, okay? And I've had those. Now, I mentioned multimedia and being in the press and all that sort of stuff earlier when a reference to Christina's Downward Duck. I had a full-page article in the Vancouver Sun on August 15th, 2009. Disinherited daughter fought back. Photo of myself and my estranged wife. I'll just cover her up. This article brought in $1 million business right away. It brought in 2 cases this week alone. People referred, one yesterday, one a few days ago, to this article because people cut these things out. They know they're going to be disinherited. Many of you probably have this up. You probably got this on your wall, right? Well, what Marg's story is about is that she was a dirty little secret. And illegitimate kid, you know, mom had to move ahead and get on, so she gave away Margaret, you know, pulled up a, get out, and left her. Margaret had a really shitty life, you know, abusive husbands, crap jobs. At one point, she called her mom up when she was 13 and said, Mom, I got rotten teeth, you know, gonna have some money for the dentist? And it's like, no, Marg, we've adopted 2 little girls and we need the money for their bedroom. So that's the sort of life Margaret had. Anyways, Mom dies and does remember Margaret in her will. She leaves Margaret $100. She left the 2 daughters that she adopted $300,000 each. Margaret's pissed. Well, she's hurt. She's devastated. She comes to see me. We sue. It actually goes to trial, and at trial I got her an equal 1/3. But it was interesting when I examined the adopted daughters for examinations for discovery. One of them tithed to her church $100,000 a year. Well, I said, how about a little charity for your sister? No, none at all. So, if you can get yourself in the news, it really, really pays off. This cost me nothing. It cost me a phone call to a reporter saying, I got a really good story for you. And I've been in the news lots and lots of times, okay? You guys can get in the news, and it's a very, very good way to get really good free mileage and advertising. Look, I've got a whole lot of other stories that I can just keep talking about. I actually was hired by the notaries a few years ago to give a 40-minute presentation. I could talk about whatever I wanted, and they paid me $800. So I called my topic Dysfunctional Families and Tasteless Jokes. And it was great. You know, just one story after another. I had a case where this happened, had a case where that happened. My secretary came to hear me talk, and she came in on Monday morning and said, that first one, you made that up. That couldn't have happened. I'm like, just before your time, that's all. I've sort of seen it all, heard it all. Okay, I'll leave you with one creepy story. Lady came to see me, and her father was a slum landlord. He owned like 30 houses. He had 6 kids. Leaves a will leaving 4 shares. One share to 3 of his kids, and 1 share to a grandson. So I asked the client, who was the executrix, daughter of the deceased, why did your father leave your son an equal share of his estate? To which she said, the father of my son is my father. Oh. Creepy, eh? Ooh. Okay, I'm going to leave you with my parting words, Pedagabos Eos.